From the moment I met Mia, I was captivated. She had a presence that demanded attention, a fiery energy in her eyes that made me feel alive. We met in a bar in downtown Seattle, both of us escaping the rain and the monotony of our lives. Her laugh was magnetic, her wit sharper than anyone I'd ever known. Within a month, we were inseparable. She had big dreams, a startup in tech, a life of luxury, maybe even a move to Los Angeles. I admired her ambition, even when it meant I had to put my own dreams on hold. At first, I didn't mind. She had this way of making everything seem exciting, like we were building an empire together. But as time passed, cracks began to show. Mia wasn't just driven. She was controlling. Small things at first. Comments about how I dressed, which friends I spent time with, or how I spent my weekends. "I just want the best for you," she'd say, with that disarming smile. And I believed her. Her sister Emma, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. Quiet, thoughtful, with a warmth that made you feel seen. She didn't demand attention. She gave it. I didn't pay much attention to her back then, but I'd later realized she was the only person who truly noticed how Mia treated me. For now, though, I was blind. I thought love meant sacrifice, compromise, and bending until you almost broke. And for Mia, I bent farther than I should have. The first time I noticed something was truly off with Mia, it was over something trivial, my Saturday morning runs. Running had always been my escape, my moment of clarity. But one morning, as I was lacing up my sneakers, Mia leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, with that familiar smirk that always carried an edge of danger. "Do you really have to do this every weekend?" she asked, her voice sweet but her tone sharp. "I mean, wouldn't it be better if you stayed home with me? We could do something productive." It was a simple enough request, but there was no mistaking the subtext. If I said no, the tension in the room would thicken. I'd learned to pick my battles by then, so I skipped my run and spent the day helping her plan the launch for her new project. That was the first time she made me give something up. It wouldn't be the last. Mia had a way of framing her demands as if they were for my own good. She'd question why I was still hanging out with certain friends. "Are they even good for you?" she'd ask, her voice dripping with faux concern. When I hesitated to cut them off, she'd play the victim. "I just want to protect you, Alex. Why don't you trust me?" Trust. It was a word she threw around a lot. But looking back, I realized it was never about trust, it was about control. Emma, her younger sister, started noticing it too. She'd sometimes catch my eye during family dinners, her gaze filled with quiet sympathy. She never said much, but there was something in the way she looked at me, like she understood what I couldn't put into words. One night, after another argument with Mia about my job, she thought I should quit and join her startup. I found myself sitting alone in the backyard, staring at the sky. Emma came out to check on me, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. I nodded, but the lump in my throat said otherwise. "You don't have to answer, you know," she said, sitting down beside me. "But if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." Her words stayed with me longer than they should have. Mia's control tightened as the months passed. She'd check my phone when I wasn't looking, question me about every text, every call. "Who's Sarah? Why is she texting you so late?" It didn't matter that Sarah was my coworker and the texts were about a client meeting. To Mia, every interaction was a threat, every friendship a betrayal waiting to happen. I started feeling like a shadow of myself. My dreams, my hobbies, my relationships, all chipped away bit by bit until I barely recognized who I was anymore. And then came the night that changed everything, the night Mia suggested something I never saw coming. It was late, past midnight, when Mia brought it up. We were sitting in the living room, the soft glow of the TV flickering across her face. She'd poured herself a second glass of red wine, something she only did when she was working through an idea in her head. I should have seen the signs, should have noticed the way her fingers tapped rhythmically against the stem of the glass. But I was tired, half distracted, and completely unprepared for what she was about to say. "You know," she started, her voice casual, almost playful. "I've been thinking, maybe we should try something new." I looked up from my phone, confused. "What do you mean?" She leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and mischief. You and we've been together for years now, and I love you, Alex. I really do. But don't you think we've gotten comfortable? Maybe even a little stagnant. There it was, her favorite tactic. Frame a criticism as a concern, make it sound like she was thinking of both of us when, in reality, she was steering me toward her agenda. I don't think we're stagnant, I replied, my voice cautious. What are you getting at? She took a sip of her wine, her gaze never leaving mine. What if we tried open relationships? Just for a month. For weeks to explore, see what's out there, and then come back to each other stronger than ever. The words hung in the air like a bad joke, except she wasn't laughing. You're serious, I said, more a statement than a question. Completely, she replied, leaning back against the couch. Think about it. No strings attached, no judgment. Just freedom. Could be good for us, Alex. It could remind us why we chose each other in the first place. I didn't respond right away. My mind was spinning, trying to process what she was suggesting. Was this some kind of test? A trap? Or did she really believe this would help our relationship? Why now? I asked finally. Mia shrugged, but her expression gave her away. There was something more behind this idea, something she wasn't saying. Why not now? We're both young, attractive, and curious. Don't you ever wonder what it would be like with someone else? I didn't answer. Couldn't. That night, I barely slept. Her proposal replayed in my mind over and over. I kept trying to figure out her angle. Was she bored? Testing me? Or did she already have someone in mind? The thought made my stomach turn. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened, but the tension between us was palpable. Over breakfast, she casually brought it up again, as if we were deciding what movie to watch. You've had time to think about it, she said, sipping her coffee. What do you say? I should have said no. I should have walked away right then and there. But instead, I heard myself agreeing. All right, for weeks. No rules, no questions. Mia's smile was electric, but behind it, I could see something darker. Triumph, maybe, or anticipation. You won't regret this, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. But I would, and so would she. The first week of freedom was strange. It was like we were living two lives. One as a couple who still shared the same bed, ate dinner together, and exchanged small talk, and another as strangers exploring separate paths. Mia seemed invigorated, almost giddy, as if the weight of our relationship had been lifted off her shoulders. At first, I didn't know what to do with this newfound freedom. I spent the first few days trying to convince myself this wasn't a trap. I went to bars, swiped on dating apps, even went out for drinks with a woman I barely knew from work. But nothing clicked. Every conversation felt hollow, every interaction laced with the guilt that maybe I was betraying something sacred. Mia, on the other hand, dove into this experiment with enthusiasm. She'd come home late, her hair tousled, her lipstick smudged, and always with a smug grin that made my stomach churn. She never said where she'd been or with whom, and I didn't ask. That was the deal, no rules, no questions. But then came the family barbecue. It was one of those rare sunny Sundays in Seattle, the kind that made everyone want to gather outside and pretend the rain didn't exist. Mia's parents hosted it at their place, a cozy suburban home with a big backyard and an old oak tree that Emma used to climb as a kid. Emma. I hadn't seen much of her since Mia's proposal, but when I walked into that backyard and saw her sitting alone at the picnic table, something shifted. She looked up and smiled, a soft, genuine smile that felt like a lifeline in the chaos my life had become. Hey, stranger, she said as I sat down across from her. Hey, I replied, unsure why my chest felt so tight. We started talking about work, about her plans to move out of her parents' house, about everything and nothing. Her voice was calm, steady, a stark contrast to the whirlwind that Mia had become. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Then Mia appeared carrying a tray of drinks. She set them down on the table and slid onto the bench beside me, draping her arm possessively around my shoulders. What are you two talking about? She asked, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "Just catching up," Emma said, her smile unwavering. Mia stayed for a few minutes, her presence a tense reminder of the boundaries we were all supposed to respect, and then wandered off to mingle with the other guests. As soon as she was gone, Emma leaned in slightly. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I wanted to say yes, to brush off her concern, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded, even as something inside me cracked. Over the next few days, I found myself thinking about Emma more than I should have. Her kindness, her warmth, it was everything Mia had once been but no longer was. And then, one night, it happened. It started innocently enough. Emma texted me, asking if I wanted to grab coffee. "Just as friends," she'd added, as if trying to reassure herself as much as me. I hesitated but agreed. That night, we sat in a quiet corner of a dimly lit cafe, talking for hours. She listened in a way Mia never had, her eyes filled with understanding instead of judgment. And when we left, walking side by side through the empty streets, she reached out and touched my hand. I should have pulled away. I should have remembered who she was, who I was, but instead I let it happen. And just like that, the line was crossed. The moment Emma's hand brushed against mine, it felt like time slowed. It wasn't just the physical touch, it was the weight behind it. It carried years of unspoken understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the chaos we were both entangled in. I didn't pull away, neither did she. We walked in silence for a while, her hand barely grazing mine until I finally reached out and held it. It was a simple act, but it felt like betrayal wrapped in relief. My mind screamed at me to stop, to think about what I was doing, but my heart drowned it out. "I shouldn't have texted you," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I shouldn't have said yes," I replied, though I knew it was a lie. We stopped walking, standing beneath the soft glow of a streetlight. Her eyes searched mine, full of conflict. "This isn't fair to anyone, Alex." "No," I said, "it's not." But even as I said it, I couldn't bring myself to let go of her hand. It started small after that, brief moments stolen in secret. A lingering glance across the room at family dinners. Texts sent late at night, full of things we couldn't say out loud. We convinced ourselves it wasn't wrong. Not really. Mia was the one who had opened the door to this. She had set the rules or the lack of them. But the truth was, it wasn't about the rules. It was about Emma. She made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. With Mia, everything was a performance. A carefully constructed act where I was always on edge, always trying to meet her impossible expectations. With Emma, I could just exist. The first time we kissed, it was raining. We'd met up for coffee again, this time under the guise of catching up. But the air between us was electric, charged with everything we weren't saying. As we walked back to her car, the rain started to fall, light at first but quickly growing heavier. We ducked under an awning, laughing at how soaked we were. And then she looked at me, her laughter fading, her expression serious. "This is a bad idea," she said, though she didn't sound convinced. "Probably," I replied, my voice low. And then, before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in. Her lips were soft, hesitant at first but quickly giving in. It was everything I'd been craving: warmth, intimacy, connection. For a moment, the world melted away, and there was only us. When we finally pulled apart, her face was a mixture of guilt and longing. "We can't keep doing this," she said, though neither of us moved to leave. "We shouldn't," I agreed, but neither of us stopped. In the weeks that followed, our connection deepened. It wasn't just physical, though the stolen kisses and late-night rendezvous became harder to resist. It was emotional. We shared pieces of ourselves that we'd kept hidden from the world, and from Mia. And then, inevitably, Mia found out. It was a slip-up on my part, a forgotten text left open on my phone. I came home one evening to find her sitting on the couch, her face pale, her hands trembling as she held my phone. "Emma," she said, her voice shaking. "Out of all people, Alex." "Emma?" I didn't know what to say. The truth hung heavy in the air between us, undeniable and unforgivable. "You were the one who wanted this," I finally said, my voice cold, distant. Her eyes flashed with anger, but beneath it, there was something else. Pain, betrayal, maybe even regret. I didn't think you'd actually do it. And I sure as hell didn't think it would be with her. She threw the phone onto the coffee table, standing up and pacing the room. You need to end this. Now. But I didn't respond, because deep down I knew I wouldn't. Mia's anger was a storm, relentless and unforgiving. That night, the house was filled with the sound of her voice, sharp and venomous, as she hurled accusations and insults at me. I sat on the couch, silent, letting her words crash over me. There was no point in defending myself. Everything she said was true, or at least parts of it were. You disgust me, Alex, she spat, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. With my sister? My sister? How could you? She stopped and turned to face me, her eyes blazing with fury. Was this your plan all along? Did you even love me? Or was this just some sick game to you? Her words stung, but they didn't cut as deeply as they once might have. Somewhere along the way, my love for Mia had eroded, worn down by years of manipulation and control. Now all I felt was a hollow ache, a sense of inevitability, like we'd been spiraling toward this moment all along. You wanted open relationships? I said finally, my voice flat. This is what you asked for. She laughed bitterly, shaking her head. Don't you dare put this on me. I gave you freedom, and you used it to destroy everything. For a moment there was silence. Then her voice softened, trembling with something I hadn't expected. Hurt. Was I not enough for you? Is that what this is about? You needed someone else to fill the gaps I couldn't. I didn't answer because the truth was too complicated to fit into a single sentence. This wasn't about Mia not being enough. It was about the cracks in our foundation, the years of resentment and unmet needs that had finally collapsed under their own weight. When she realized I wasn't going to respond, her expression hardened. You're going to end it with her, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. I looked up at her, meeting her gaze for the first time that night. No, I said simply. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked genuinely shocked. Excuse me? I'm not ending it with Emma, I repeated, my voice steady. You don't get to control me anymore, Mia. Her face twisted with rage, and she picked up the nearest object, a glass from the coffee table, and hurled it at the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, echoing the tension that had been building between us for years. You're unbelievable, she said, her voice shaking. After everything I've done for you, after everything we've built together, you're just going to throw it all away? For her. We didn't build anything, Mia, I said, standing up. You built a cage, and I let myself stay in it for far too long. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Mia stormed out of the house that night, slamming the door behind her. I didn't try to stop her. I sat in the silence, staring at the shards of glass on the floor, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. The fallout wasn't over, though. Over the next few days, Mia's anger turned into something colder, more calculated. She began calling family members, painting herself as the victim of my betrayal. Friends I'd known for years started giving me the cold shoulder. At work, rumors began to circulate, whispers I knew had come from her. And then there was Emma. She tried to stay out of it, but it was impossible. Mia cornered her during a family gathering, unleashing all her fury. I wasn't there to witness it, but Emma told me later how Mia had accused her of being a homewrecker, of stealing what wasn't hers. I'm sorry, Emma said that night, tears in her eyes. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It's not your fault, I told her, pulling her into my arms. This was bound to fall apart eventually. But even as I said it, I couldn't ignore the growing weight of guilt pressing down on me. I had destroyed something that could never be repaired, and I wasn't sure if Emma and I could survive the wreckage. Mia didn't disappear quietly. That wasn't her style. The first sign of her retaliation came a few days after our confrontation. I was at work when I received a series of texts from mutual friends. Long, dramatic messages filled with disbelief and condemnation. Mia had told them everything, or more accurately, her version of everything. "She's saying you cheated on her," one friend texted. "With her sister. Is it true?" I stared at the screen, my stomach sinking. I knew Mia was angry, but I hadn't expected her to weaponize our private lives so ruthlessly. The truth, messy and complicated as it was, didn't matter to her. She was crafting a narrative, and in it I was the villain. Emma called me later that evening, her voice shaky. "She came by my parents' house today," she said. "It wasn't pretty." "What happened?" I asked, already bracing myself. "She started screaming at me, Alex, in front of everyone. Mom, Dad, even the neighbors heard. She said I was a backstabber, that I'd ruined her life." Emma hesitated, her voice breaking. "She told them about us." I felt my chest tighten. Mia wasn't just trying to hurt me. She was going after Emma too. "That's not all," Emma continued. "She said she's going to make sure you regret this. She kept talking about how you wouldn't get away with it." I didn't doubt her. Mia's anger had always been a weapon, sharp and unrelenting. Now it was aimed directly at us. In the following weeks, the tension escalated. Mia started showing up at places she knew I'd be, bars, coffee shops, even the grocery store. She never spoke to me directly, but her presence was impossible to ignore. She'd stand in the corner, her eyes fixed on me, a silent reminder that she wasn't done with me yet. At work, things got worse. Mia had apparently contacted HR, accusing me of misconduct. The allegations were vague but damaging enough to warrant an investigation. My manager called me into his office, his expression grim. "Alex, this doesn't look good," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. Inside were printouts of emails and text messages, private conversations Mia must have hacked into. She'd taken bits and pieces, twisting them into something sinister. "I didn't do any of this," I said, my voice tight with frustration. He sighed. "I want to believe you, but we have to follow protocol. Until this is resolved, we're putting you on leave." I left the office that day feeling defeated. Mia wasn't just trying to hurt me emotionally. She was dismantling my life piece by piece. Emma, meanwhile, was caught in the crossfire. Her relationship with her parents became strained. Her mother, ever the peacemaker, tried to stay neutral, but her father was less forgiving. "You betrayed your sister," he told her during one particularly heated argument. "How could you do this to family?" Emma started pulling away from me after that. Not completely, but enough for me to notice. She stopped responding to my texts as quickly, stopped meeting me as often. When I finally confronted her about it, she broke down. "I don't know if I can do this, Alex," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Everywhere I go, people look at me like I'm the villain. My family, my friends, even people I barely know. It's like I'm walking around with a scarlet letter." "I'm sorry," I said, hating myself for dragging her into this mess. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Neither of us did. But it didn't matter. The damage was done, and Mia wasn't finished yet." One evening, as I was driving home, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Mia, sent to me and half of our mutual contacts. The subject line read, "The truth about Alex and Emma." Inside was a long, detailed account of our affair, complete with screenshots of private messages, embellished accusations, and a closing paragraph that painted Mia as the tragic victim of our betrayal. By the time I finished reading, my hands were shaking. This wasn't just personal anymore, it was public. Mia had turned our private lives into a spectacle, and I had no idea how to stop her. The email spread like wildfire. By the time I woke up the next morning, my phone was flooded with messages. Some from people I hadn't spoken to in years, others from coworkers and acquaintances who had no business being involved in my personal life. The subject line alone was enough to turn heads, and Mia knew that. Emma called me, her voice trembling. "Did you see it?" she asked, though she didn't need to. "Yes," I said, the word heavy with resignation. "It's everywhere," she whispered. "My parents got it. My friends. Even my boss asked me about it." The guilt in her voice was palpable, and it crushed me. "I'm so sorry, Emma," I said, But the words felt hollow. Sorry didn't undo the damage. Sorry didn't erase the humiliation Mia had orchestrated. That day, I stayed home, afraid to face the world. I could already imagine the whispers, the stares, the judgment. Every mistake I'd made, every lapse in judgment, was now laid bare for everyone to see. But hiding didn't stop the fallout. Later that evening, there was a knock at my door. For a moment, I thought it was Mia, here to gloat or to throw more fuel on the fire. But when I opened the door, it was Emma. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Without saying a word, she stepped inside and collapsed onto the couch. "I can't do this anymore," she said finally, her voice breaking. "Emma, please." "No, Alex," she interrupted, her tone sharper now. "This isn't sustainable. Look at what we've done. Look at what I've done." "You didn't do anything wrong," I said, sitting down beside her. "Didn't I?" She let out a bitter laugh. "I betrayed my own sister. Even if Mia is—" She paused, struggling to find the right word. "Even if she's the way she is, she didn't deserve this. None of us did." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Deep down, I knew she was right. We'd both made choices, and those choices had consequences we couldn't ignore. Emma took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she spoke. "I love you, Alex. I do. But this isn't love. It's chaos. It's destruction. And I can't keep losing pieces of myself just to hold on to us." I didn't know what to say. Every argument I could think of felt selfish, like I was asking her to bear the weight of my mistakes. "I need time," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Time to figure out who I am outside of all this." I wanted to argue, to beg her to stay, but I knew it wouldn't change her mind. Emma wasn't walking away because she didn't care. She was walking away because she cared too much. After she left, the silence in the apartment was deafening. I sat on the couch for hours, replaying her words over and over in my mind. This wasn't just about Emma or Mia anymore. This was about me, about the choices I'd made, the person I'd become. For years, I'd let resentment and anger fester, until they consumed everything in their path. Now I was left with nothing but the wreckage. Mia's retaliation didn't stop. The emails were just the beginning. She posted on social media, sharing her truth with anyone who would listen. She contacted my employer again, pushing for further action. She even showed up at my parents' house, dragging them into the mess. By the end of the week, I felt like I was suffocating. Every aspect of my life was under attack, and I had no idea how to fight back. The breaking point came one night when I found myself sitting in the dark, staring at an empty bottle of whiskey on the coffee table. My mind was racing, filled with thoughts I didn't want to face. How had it come to this? I thought about Emma, about the way her face lit up when she laughed, the way she made me feel like I was worth something. I thought about Mia, about the love we'd once shared and how it had curdled into something toxic. And then I thought about myself. For the first time in years, I saw myself clearly, not as the victim of Mia's anger or the object of Emma's affection, but as a man who had made choices. Some good, some bad, all leading to this moment. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I made a decision. This couldn't go on. Something had to change. The next day, I reached out to Mia. It felt like the only thing I could do. Face the storm head-on, put an end to the chaos she'd been stirring. I didn't know what I was expecting from this conversation. I wasn't even sure I wanted to make amends. But there was something inside me, a quiet voice urging me to face her, to stop running from the mess I'd created. She agreed to meet. We decided on a small cafe, neutral ground, somewhere we could pretend for an hour that things were still okay. But I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. When I walked into the cafe, I saw her sitting at a table near the window. Her posture was tense, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee, as if trying to hold herself together. She didn't look up when I sat down. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice low. The words felt strange in my mouth, like I wasn't sure who I was anymore. Mia finally looked at me, her eyes flashing with something sharp. "Because you deserve it," she said coldly. You think you can just tear apart everything we had and walk away without consequences? I didn't respond at first. There was nothing I could say to justify what I'd done. Mia, I never meant to hurt you like this. It just happened. She scoffed, pushing her cup away. That's the problem with you, Alex. You never think about the consequences. You just do whatever the hell you want and expect everyone else to clean up after you. I didn't ask for any of this, I said, my voice rising. I didn't ask for it to end like this. You didn't ask? She shot back, her tone dripping with sarcasm. You made your choice. You chose her over me. You chose to destroy everything we built together. I could see the anger in her eyes, but beneath it, there was pain. A pain I couldn't ignore. Mia, I loved you. I still do. But you were suffocating me. I didn't know how to breathe anymore. She went quiet at that. Her gaze softened for a moment, as if she were seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time in a long while. Maybe I was suffocating you, she said quietly, her voice breaking. Maybe I didn't know how to let you go. But this isn't the way to fix it, Alex. I stared at her, trying to understand what she was saying. The guilt hit me harder than I expected. She was right. Everything we had, everything we'd built was broken. But the pieces weren't all lost yet. I'm sorry, I said, the words feeling like a weight I'd been carrying for so long. I'm sorry for everything. Her eyes narrowed. Do you think saying sorry makes it better? No, it doesn't. But I can't undo what I've done. I just want you to stop hurting me. Stop hurting Emma. She leaned back in her chair, considering me. You think I'm the villain in this, don't you? She asked, her voice suddenly soft. I didn't know how to answer that. Mia had hurt me, yes, but I had hurt her too. The truth was, I didn't know who the villain was anymore. There was so much guilt and anger on both sides that it was hard to distinguish between the two. I think we both made choices, I said carefully. And now we both have to live with the consequences. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stared out the window, her face distant. I knew she was processing everything, just like I was. But we couldn't go back. Not now. Finally, she looked at me again, her eyes clear, her expression almost resigned. You're right. We both made choices. And I can't keep punishing you for yours. She stood up, taking a deep breath. But you need to fix this, Alex. Fix yourself. I don't know if I'll ever forgive you, but maybe, just maybe, you can make this right with her. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd been so focused on the fallout with Mia that I hadn't stopped to think about Emma, about what she had lost in all of this. Mia's rage, Emma's heartbreak, my own guilt. They all felt like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't fit together. I'll try, I said quietly. Though even as I said it, I wasn't sure what that meant. Could I fix this? Could I undo the damage I had done? Mia turned to leave, her steps slow and deliberate. Before she walked out the door, she paused and glanced back at me. Goodbye, Alex, she said, her voice soft. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. And then she was gone. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, barely able to function. The conversation with Mia had been a strange mixture of closure and more confusion. For the first time, I had felt like she was letting go of the anger, or at least beginning to. But what did that mean for us? Was this the last time I'd ever speak to her? Or was it just another step in a never-ending cycle of pain? I couldn't stop thinking about Emma. I kept replaying our last conversation in my mind. The way she had broken down in front of me, her voice filled with desperation. She was slipping away from me, and I didn't know if I could bring her back. I picked up my phone and called her, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted her, then waited, but no response came. It was like she had disappeared into the void, and I was powerless to reach her. Later that night, I sat on the couch, scrolling through my social media, trying to numb myself with the distraction. But everything reminded me of the wreckage I had created. Friends I hadn't spoken to in weeks had started commenting on the situation, passing judgment, sharing their thoughts about my actions. The noise was deafening, and I couldn't escape it. At some point, I stopped scrolling and just stared at my phone, wondering what the hell I was doing. What had all of this been for? Mia, Emma, me, none of us had come out of this unscathed. There was no victory in any of this. I had destroyed the person I was, the person I thought I could be, and for what? A moment of revenge? A brief escape from the stifling relationship that had suffocated me for years? None of it had been worth it. But it was too late to take any of it back. The decision weighed heavily on me. Do I try to salvage what little I had left with Emma? Or do I walk away entirely, leaving both her and Mia behind, and attempt to rebuild my life from the ground up? I texted Emma one last time. I need to talk to you. Please. I'm sorry for everything. Then I waited. The minutes turned to hours, and the waiting felt unbearable. I poured myself another drink to calm my nerves, but it didn't help. The guilt still gnawed at me, and the silence between us stretched on. Just when I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, my phone buzzed. It was Emma. Her text was short, but it sent a shock through me. We need to talk too. I drove to her apartment that night, my heart pounding in my chest. The drive felt long, every second dragging as I considered what might happen when I saw her. Would she yell at me? Would she close the door on me forever? I had no idea what she was thinking, but I knew this was my last chance to make things right. When I arrived, I rang the doorbell, and Emma opened the door almost immediately. Her face was still pale, and her eyes were red from crying. But there was a quiet strength about her now, something I hadn't seen before. She wasn't the same person I had been with just a few weeks ago. You came, she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. I nodded, unsure of what to say. I had to. She stepped aside, letting me in. I could feel the tension in the room, the weight of everything we hadn't said hanging between us. We sat down on the couch, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Emma broke the silence. I don't know if I can forgive you, Alex, she said, her voice small. You broke something inside me, and I'm scared that if I let you back in, I'll just get hurt again. I get that, I said, the words raw in my throat. I know I hurt you. I hurt you more than I can ever explain, and I'm so sorry. But I still love you, Emma, and I want to fix this. I want to do whatever it takes to make things right between us. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, and for a moment, I thought she might not answer. But then, slowly, she looked up at me, her gaze meeting mine. I love you too, Alex, she whispered. But love isn't enough to make up for what's happened. It's not enough to undo the damage. My heart sank. I know, I whispered back. I know. But if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to prove to you that I'm worth your trust again. She didn't speak for a moment. Then, finally, she stood up, walking toward the window. She looked out at the city, her silhouette framed by the dim light of the streetlights outside. I need time, Alex, she said quietly. Time to figure out what I want, what I need. But I can't give you any promises. I'm not asking for promises, I replied, standing up as well. I'm asking for a chance. She turned to face me then, her eyes filled with unshed tears. A chance isn't something I can give you easily. I need to know that you're really willing to change, that you're not just trying to fix things for yourself. I will, I said. I will do whatever it takes. I'll prove it to you. She nodded slowly, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but in that moment I understood something. This wasn't about fixing the past. It was about building a future, one step at a time, no matter how long it took. I'm not ready to be with you again yet, she said quietly. But I'm willing to see where this goes. Slowly, very slowly. I nodded, my heart both heavy and hopeful. I'll wait. And so, for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, something real. But it wouldn't be easy. Couldn't be. The days that followed were like a slow burn, each one a little bit more unbearable than the last. But somehow they also felt like they had a purpose. Emma had told me she needed time, and I had given it to her. I stayed away, respected her space, and didn't push her for answers. For once, I knew I had to let her decide what she wanted, even if it killed me. I spent my days thinking, about Mia, about Emma, about myself. And slowly, painfully, I began to realize just how deep my own flaws ran. I had spent so much time blaming others for the pain in my life that I hadn't even noticed how much I had been sabotaging myself. I wasn't the man I used to be. The person I had become was a result of every poor choice, every act of revenge, every lie I told myself. I knew it wouldn't be easy to rebuild what I had with Emma, but I had to try. I owed it to her, and I owed it to myself. Weeks passed, and during that time, I did what I could to repair the relationships I'd damaged. I reached out to my family, my friends, people I'd abandoned or pushed away in the chaos of it all. I apologized, not expecting forgiveness, but hoping for some sense of closure. I made amends with my coworkers, telling them the truth about why I had been distant and distracted. Some were understanding, others not so much. But I had to face the consequences, even if it meant losing people I had once considered friends. Then, one night, after almost a month of silence, I received a text from Emma. "Can we meet tomorrow?" I felt my heart skip a beat. It wasn't an answer, but it was something. She wanted to see me. Maybe that was enough. The next day, I waited in the same cafe where we had met weeks ago. I couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu, as if we were about to replay the same broken conversation, only this time with more clarity, more honesty. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but I was ready to hear whatever she had to say. When Emma walked in, I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. Peace. The anguish, the doubt, the sorrow. Those things had been replaced with something more grounded. I didn't know if it was because she had forgiven me, or if she had simply accepted what had happened, but whatever it was a step forward. She sat down across from me, her hands folded neatly in front of her. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I wanted to tell her how much I had changed, how much I had learned, but I knew better than to say empty words. "I've been thinking," she said finally, her voice soft but steady. "A lot. About us. About everything." I nodded, afraid to interrupt her, afraid that if I spoke, I'd ruin whatever fragile hope was between us. "Alex," she began again, meeting my gaze, "what we had before was toxic. We both know that. But I can't pretend it didn't matter. Because it did. And maybe we can find a way back to something good. Not the same as before, but something new. Something different." My heart raced. For the first time in a long time, I could see a future with her. Not the broken, fractured version that had been tainted by mistakes, but a new possibility. One where we both had the chance to grow and heal together. "I don't expect everything to be perfect," she continued. "I know we can't erase the past, but I want to try. For us, I think we owe it to ourselves to at least give it a shot." I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. "I'll spend the rest of my life showing you that I'm worthy of this chance." Emma squeezed my hand, a small but meaningful gesture. "I'm not asking you to be perfect, Alex. I'm asking you to be real." And for the first time, I realized that was all I needed to be. Real. Not the man I used to be. Not the broken version of myself I had become. But the man I was now, flawed, imperfect, but willing to do whatever it took to be better. We left the cafe that night not with promises, but with something far more important. The hope that we could rebuild, together. We had no idea what the future held, but we were willing to face it, hand in hand. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, we began to rebuild our relationship piece by piece. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt, still scars from the past that we both carried. But every day we made the choice to keep going. And slowly we began to find our way back to each other. Looking back, I don't know if I'll ever fully understand the choices I made, the pain I caused, or the damage I did. I'll never be able to take back what happened, but I can learn from it. I can use the mistakes of my past to shape a better future, one where I don't let anger, resentment, or pride dictate my actions. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that we all have the power to change. We just have to be brave enough to confront the truth, no matter how ugly or painful it may be. We can't control the past, but we can control what we do with the present. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the real healing begins. What do you think? Did I make the right decision in the end? Let me know in the comments below. If you've ever been in a toxic relationship or had to make a difficult choice, I'd love to hear your story. And don't forget to like and subscribe. This journey might be over, but there's more to come. Thanks for watching.